I've got amyloidosis. Diagnosed in 2010. It had probably been in my body for a year or 2 or 3 before that. If somebody came along to me and said, I've got amyloidosis, this is what I'd tell them. You're in for, sorry about the cliche, a unique journey. I don't think anybody knows what's going to face you. There isn't that much information around. I think I've been fairly lucky in that I'm still alive. I'm still kicking. I have a great life. But it could all go wrong at any time, really. The treatment was foul. The people I met were great. The friends I've made have been great. The challenges the opportunities I've had. I'm doing things now I wouldn't have done before. Not physical, because I'm a bit knackered. But life just takes on a different dimension, as long as you let it. What you're in for is probably some chemotherapy, which affects people differently. Mine, on the whole, wasn't too bad, I have to say. I've never been sick throughout the whole thing. But it's caused me other difficulties. I've had tests. I must glow in the dark at times with a number of X-rays and CT scans and scanning this and doing that. I've got blood scattered around the country from the various tests that are being done. I did have a stem cell transplant, which was thoroughly unpleasant. I could talk about that at some length, but I don't want to say too much because it was horrible. And since then, there's been a slow improvement. I can work. Didn't really stop working throughout the whole thing. It's not stopped me eating, drinking. Daft as it may sound, now that you've been diagnosed, for me, the scariest bit is over. Because I found the scary bit not knowing what was wrong with me. Motor neurone disease, muscular dystrophy. There's no way back from those. Didn't like that at all. So when I got the diagnosis of, Richard, you've got AL amyloidosis, well, yeah, so. Then I had to go and find out what it was all about. Now, the first thing I think any amyloidosis sufferer does on diagnosis is get down to the National Amyloidosis Centre. They're absolutely great. And what they'll do, they'll give you the definitive diagnosis, which will, I believe, and I'm still not sure, sort of map out what could happen to you. But even then, nobody really knows. Now, when I was diagnosed with AL amyloidosis, the standard treatment is some form of chemotherapy and hope for the best. If it works, great. If it doesn't, they'll find another sort of chemotherapy. And if that doesn't work, they'll find another sort of chemotherapy. Now, I had 3 different lots, all of which worked in the short term, but it returned with vigour. So in the middle of that, I had a stem cell transplant. A horrible experience. But now, I'm hardly on any drugs at all, no real nasty ones. Everything is in remission. And I lead a not very physical, but normal life other than that. What faces each individual, I think, is unique. Probably with amyloidosis more than most things, in that there's a load of possible treatments, but depending on which sort you've got, when I go down to the NAC, the National Amyloidosis Centre, all the people I talk to are very positive. They're doing all sorts of things, but I know I've been one of the relatively lucky ones. What does it entail physically? There is an amyloidosis centre in London, so the first thing you've got to do is get there. Now, when I was diagnosed, I was still relatively fit. I could do stuff on my own. It's an overnight trip, and the NAC will actually organise everything, transport, overnight accommodation, the whole lot, which I didn't take them up on because at the time I didn't need to. You go down there, they're the only place with the scanners that can scan for amyloid. So they scan me, which involves radioactive jollops stuck into me on the first day. Second day you go back for the scan. They do all sorts of heart scans, echoes, ECGs, blood tests, urine tests. On the second day I met the consultant, who was lovely. He spent as much time as I wanted, which was remarkable. Answered all the questions that we had, was caring but direct. All the consultants I've met there have been great. They will treat people there, but it's in London, and it's not something you're going to be travelling up and down, not something you want to be travelling up and down the country. So I was treated locally. It was actually at the Christie in Manchester by a haematologist. It involved chemotherapy, and I was relatively lucky with that in that the chemo initially didn't damage me that much. Unfortunately, it didn't work. So there was a different regime of chemo, and over time it does begin to take its toll. I'm now at the state where I can't actually, I can walk 250 metres. That's about as far as I can get before I've got to sit down and rest. I'm still driving, but I have a carer, and I wouldn't like to live without Kathy around. I don't go too far on my own because I do get tired very quickly at times. And if Kathy's there, then she takes over driving or whatever it happens to be. I can't carry stuff for very far. And the drugs have taken their toll in terms of osteoporosis. My lung function is very bad now. But sitting here looking at me, just sitting in a chair talking to me, you wouldn't know there's anything wrong with me. I think I've been fairly lucky. The only people I've met who've got amyloidosis have all been very positive, very friendly. There's a little community. It's a very small community. But I think there must be a lot of sufferers around who are in a worse state than I am a lot of the time because the diagnosis just came too late. I don't actually know that, but that's what I suspect. My recommendation for this very unpleasant disease is it can be beaten. There's no guarantee of that, but I've heard of people who've survived for many years after the original diagnosis. I'm here 6-7 years on, and no intention of going anywhere quite yet. But just be positive, because there's an awful lot in the mind. There are times when the treatment has been foul. And oh God, not more of this. But it always gets better. And it will continue to get better.